What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hobby Hotline today on this Saturday, July 15th, here on Bench Clear Media. Today is episode 255. I am here as the host with my two wonderful co-hosts. We got Horatio and Chris. Horatio, how you doing today?
Good, Adam. Thank you. Thanks for having me on, man. Excited my first time here. So,
that's exciting. Very exciting. And then Chris, I think you are maybe would you consider yourself a veteran of Hobby Hotline, or what would you this is Horatio's rookie show. What would you consider yourself?
We got to break him in. So
yeah.
Don't pay attention to the chat. Especially
right. Yeah. The chat might chat does like to go a little bit wild sometimes, but that's what chats are kind of for, in my opinion. So
don't get us wrong. We like you people in the chat.
Right.
We
exactly.
like it every once in a while when you call in and want to ask us a question that way. But some people,
right, things can go rogue at sometimes, but that's why we do a live show. That's what the live show is all about. Things don't always go as according to plan. So like I said, we're here today on the Bench Clear Media Network. I did almost say welcome back to Hobby News Daily, because I do have a podcast there, and I'm so used to saying that and being the host on here. I'm not always the host as on the show on Hobby Hotline. And later on, we're actually going to be getting into one of Chris's articles that he wrote for Hobby News Daily about the National. This is going to be a pretty, national heavy show, as many people would probably expect, as we're, in the, last couple weeks leading up to the show. Make sure, if you are watching on YouTube, if you're watching on any of the networks, make sure you hit like and subscribe. That helps us out. That helps the show out. We'd really appreciate that. We also are going to be, I'm going to pull up. We're also going to be at the National. Hobby Hotline is going to be on the main stage Saturday, July 29th at 11 a.m. CST. I guess that would be noon. So pretty much the same time.
That would be 1 hour later than normal.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
We're on at 11 Eastern.
Yes.
12:30 in Newfoundland. So this would be noon Eastern, 1:30 in Newfoundland.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yep. That makes sense. Yeah. So if you're going to be at the National, make sure you come to the booth. I mean, if you're there at 11 a.m., you'll have the time. It's not like time does crazy stuff like that. But so 11 a.m. Saturday, make sure you come to the main stage. Hobby Hotline will be there on the main stage. Like I said, a lot of kind of national heavy topics today. Actually, our first topic was something that Nat Turner tweeted out earlier this week. So he tweeted out, I'm actually going to pull up the tweet here. Let me just, I'm engineering as well. We're going to present and then share screen. And then Nat Turner tweeted out that if you're going to be at the National and you are looking to cross any of your cards to PSA, to send him a message before going to the show. Now, he does clarify later on in this tweet that there is going to be pretty much like a limit on, or there's going to be a price floor essentially on what the card has to cost, which, I mean, that obviously makes sense. He's probably not just going to be crossing, Zion random 19 or 2019 Prism cards. And I mean, crossing and grading, it's a bit controversial. I mean, some people are for it, some people are against it. I mean, Horatio, I'll start with you. What do you think from this tweet? Like, are you somebody who likes crossing cards, or are you somebody that maybe is like, you would want people to stay away from that kind of stuff?
No, I mean, it's tough because as a collector, and I'm more of a vintage collector, so I like to see a lot of my stuff like, in the SGC slabs. I just think it fits a lot better. It looks nicer for the kind of cards that I collect. But the truth of the matter is, like, in the secondary market, right? Like, if you're ever looking to move your cards, PSA cards, especially premium cards, do command a premium. So when he's talking about these, huge cards, and later on he said something about like a 25K minimum. I understand why somebody would want to do that. It makes perfect sense, because the reality is, at some point you are going to want to, either move your collection or give it away to somebody, and then they'll move it, unless you just want to be buried with them. But I don't see that too bad. I also know that SGC has had a run with some of the higher end cards, like the top 0.01%. So there's also like a pretty good marketing move on his end to kind of get more of those cards in their slabs. Makes a lot of sense,
Yeah, I mean, I'm very 50-50 on if I like crossing. I feel like you shouldn't, but at the same time, I'm like, I understand from like a marketing selling perspective why you would want a card in a PSA slab versus, SGC or BGS. Chris, I'll kick it to you as well. What do you think about this crossing? Like, do you think do you have any cards that maybe Nat Turner is going to be crossing at the National?
First of all, I'm probably the wrong person to ask on this because I normally don't get my cards graded. But when you go to the National, you'll notice that the line to the PSA booth is constant all 5 days. And when I saw this tweet, my reaction was, man, I would hate to be a PSA grader at the National because as if you weren't busy enough, now you're going to have these cards that your boss is advertising to want to get crossed over into PSA slabs. If you're getting if you're going to the National and want to get your cards graded, I would say do that first thing on Wednesday.
Yes,
you're going to be waiting. So hopefully they bring it on-site graders to get them all finished by Sunday afternoon. So.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the things. Like the couple times I've been to the National, PSA. I mean, even just the grading in general. I mean, I feel like people probably feel more comfortable bringing their cards and dropping them off in person, so that way they know that they don't have to send them through the mail. And I mean, if you're getting them graded on Wednesday, you probably don't have to pay for like the expedited service if you want to pick them up on Sunday. Like if you're dropping them off Saturday and you want to pick them up Sunday, obviously you're going to be paying. You're going to pay for that extra speed there. And I mean, if it's a 25K card, I mean, I do wonder. I wonder if something like this had happened in the past, how many cards even would have been in that 25K range? Like you look at how many cards nowadays, and I think we've seen some pretty decent sized fluctuation in the market. So there aren't as many, I suppose, as there maybe was a couple of years ago. But like that 25K range, it seems like there's a decent amount of cards that are coming out of every single product nowadays that are in that 25K range. So, I mean, Horatio, I'll kick it to you with the 25K. Do you think that's a good price point? Like, do you think Nat Turner is getting his DMs flooded with people, or do you think like that it's going to be a reasonable amount? Like, or do you think that maybe he should have, I guess, maybe increased that price point at all?
So maybe you're talking to the wrong guy as well, Adam, because I don't have a 25K card in my collection.
Right, exactly.
But it's a pretty high value, and I think, in thinking about it, I think that there's a next step, a next play. I don't think that he's doing this just to kind of, it's a good marketing tool, and he is going to have these higher end cards in his slabs, but I don't know if it's got something to do with their vaulting service. I don't know if they're going to start sort of like their own, another marketplace with their high end marketplace and kind of start competing a little bit more. Just kind of be out there a little bit more as a PSA brand. But 25K I think is decent. I don't know how many collectors are out there with higher end cards, right, that want to cross them over, because at that point I think you might be sort of loyal to your grading service too. If you have a $50,000 card, the first place you're going to go to is that grader that you trust, is where you're going to go with that card for whatever reason, whether it's a SGC slab, the BGS slab, whatever, PSA slab. So I think 25K is kind of that sweet spot.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And, again, like I was saying, that 25K, you're probably feeling a little bit safer dropping that off at the National than you are like sending that through the mail. I mean, I just can't believe that I'm thinking about all the cards that get graded and all of the high value cards that are getting graded. Like I would just be a nervous wreck the whole time. Like until I see that the thing says, until I see the tracking says that it's been delivered, and then it goes through grading, and then until I have the card in my hand, I would just be, nervous the whole entire time. So, I mean, I guess that grading at the National is, you're maybe saving some of that nervousness, at least from my standpoint. I mean, I have graded cards in the past, but I mean, I've never graded a card that's worth $25,000. I mean, and Chris, you were saying you really don't grade your cards at all? Is there like is there a reason, or is it just like you like the
don't
raw
have a
cards?
reason
Like
to do so right now. So, I mean, I have cards that I would say would be valued at $25,000. If I were to get them graded, I'd feel a lot more comfortable dropping them off personally.
yes.
Whether at a card show or I know BGS, if you lived in the Dallas area, you can drop them off. I don't know if they do that anymore. But I would feel a lot more comfortable dropping them off than having the Postal Service or FedEx lose it or damage it in transit.
Yeah, right. Especially, I mean, if you're sending cards through the mail, I don't know. I always just get so nervous. Like I sometimes even get nervous just
even
selling
buying cards on eBay.
Buying cards too. Right, exactly. Yeah,
you've got to put a lot of faith in the seller that they know how to properly package and ship a valuable card without it being damaged. So
right, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, shout out to the Postal Service, because like, even though, obviously there's probably been times where collectors have had issues with cards, the amount of cards that have been bought and sold and sent through the mail, it's really, it like doesn't even make much sense, honestly, that they're able to get all this mail to everybody. Like there's just so much mail that goes out every single day. Like think about all the junk mail you get, like, and somehow you're able, I don't know. It's alien technology in my opinion. And the Postal Service, like they do, they do a good enough job where, people are able to, people are sending stuff through the mail and somehow it gets there. I don't know. I have no idea how. So yeah, that's, I mean, like I said, Nat Turner, kind of kicking things off with the show here. Big name at PSA. And then the next topic again, I accidentally clicked on the wrong link. Still talking about the National. Like I said, it's going to be a national heavy show here. Fanatics, they are going to be jumping into the live event business. This is, I mean, pretty much just a normal move to, or pretty much on par with what Fanatics has been trying to do. I do wonder if Fanatics is trying to just like cast a wide net when it comes to all the things that they're trying to do, and then whatever sticks. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of, more grading. Like I know the Fanatics does grading, but they don't necessarily do it to the size that like PSA or any of those people are. So Chris, I'll start with you. Do you think that Fanatics would like be able to take over the National? I mean, probably not. I mean, I'm wondering, like, from your perspective, where do you think Fanatics could get to with this type of business, I guess?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a coincidence that this was announced a week and a half before the National. So look, Fanatics wants to be the end all be all of everything. They want their hands in everything aspect of the hobby, soup to nuts. They bought Topps, so now they're a baseball card producer. They have a massive retail operation, not just through their website, but also through lids and other distribution sites. So they're in the retail portion of it. So throwing an event, why not? I think a lot of people have wondered, why isn't there something like the San Diego Comic-Con, for example, for our hobby? The National, it's just, I know they've kind of added some things like the stage that we're going to be on Saturday at noon. But why isn't there more than that? I know Topps does this one thing has been doing a thing at the National for like the last dozen years, but it's only in it's after hours. It's in a small conference room with maybe at most 150 people. Why don't they have it on a larger stage on the show floor so that everybody can see? Why don't, like the other card companies, have big presentations for consumers? Why don't the athletes that come in and sign, Why don't they like spend an hour on stage, do a little Q&A, be interviewed, take questions like they have at some of these Comic Cons? So I'm curious as to what Fanatics is trying here. I'm curious as to where they want to have it. You know, the National has kind of been on this Chicago, Cleveland, Atlantic City rotation for the last decade or so. Why don't maybe they might have one in California or Dallas, or throw this someplace that's been a little underserved. So I'm kind of curious as to what this event business is going to be. So
definitely. Yeah. And Horatio, I'll kick it to you. Kind of, what are your initial thoughts from hearing this news about Fanatics trying to start this up?
Well, I know Josh Luber. I don't know him, but I know Josh Luber has said, in the past, that he wants to build the hobby by, not by making card collectors want to buy more, but by bringing a completely new set of collectors. And so he's a guy that collects like Kim Kardashian rookie cards. Okay. And so that should tell you kind of everything. It makes sense. He's going to expand the hobby by making, bringing actors, actresses, even, women athletes coming in, expanding it to where you have people that are relevant in today's TV shows, bring them in. And it makes a lot of sense because, sometimes I don't want to kind of, preach on my soapbox here, but like the National, right? Like there's a big segment there. We got the Women's World Cup coming up. Let's say if it was a non-World Cup year, could you imagine the lines that would come out to get to meet out Trinity Rodman, right? And the amount of women that would come out, and girls and dads that would bring out their daughters to meet, members of the national, women's team. And so on the surface, like I thought, man, this is Fanatics putting their tentacles again on something else. But here's an opportunity for them to do something different. And just like we talk about Fanatics being, taking over everything and being a monopoly, which is not a good thing to some extent. Well, maybe they're giving the National some competition, right? And something to think about and something to improve their experience. Like Chris was saying, like you said, like those athletes that you pay to get whatever signed, they're behind like this curtain, it's almost inaccessible and, you don't see them. Why not bring them out onto the stage for an hour? Why not? I don't know what the cost is. I don't know if they have time, but you got to be willing to bet that a couple of those guys would want to spend time with their fans and be part of the hobby. So I am looking forward to seeing how they do it. And it is also interesting. I'd love for it to be in New York. Selfishly speaking, I think it'd be a great spot to start off.
Right. Yeah.
And
New York.
New York is that Fanatics could probably afford to rent out the Javits Center for something like this, or some other big city convention center, whereas the National wouldn't be able to do so because they're going to lose money on it. So Fanatics might rent out the Javits Center, hold this event, and treat it almost like a loss leader, a promotional event.
Yeah.
Right. So. Yeah. And I mean, I think if you look at like what Michael Rubin and Fanatics has kind of done, like with other events that they've kind of put on. I mean, obviously, I'm not sure how aware everybody, I don't know how online everyone is in the audience, but people have, Michael Rubin every summer has like this party during 4th of July, and, all these celebrities and Tom Brady is there and all these people. So it's like Michael Rubin, I think he has a pretty good idea of how to put on like an event. Now, I don't know if that is necessarily something that the hobby that we know would be interested in, but I do think the one thing that I think that's been interesting over the past couple of years is that sports cards and the hobby, I guess you could say, has become a lot less niche than it was, and just even maybe not even the concept or the overall industry as a whole. If you compare it to things like fashion or like anime or video games, all these like sort of niche things became much more popular over the past few over the past few years, and I definitely would think I would say sports cards is in that conversation of the things that have become a lot more popular. So, if this event business that Fanatics wants to start, if they're trying to come in and build, like it says in the article, and like they've been saying, the Comic-Con of sports cards, I guess I'll just be interested to know how they're going to do that. So, Chris, I'll ask you this question actually. So, what if you were to, if you're going to the national and you had one wish of something that they don't do that you would like to see, what would that be? Like, is there anything that comes to mind that you can think of?
Yeah, presentations by the card companies. Just give Topps, Panini, Upper Deck maybe like 2 hours and just tell us, what are you going to make in the next 12 months? What do you have planned? Topps kind of sort of does that now, but like I said, it's only limited, but throw it out to the broader audience. Why not?
Yeah, I'll ask you the same question, Horatio. Is there something, I don't know how many times you've been to the national, but like, is there something that you think could make the national maybe more mainstream, like a Comic-Con, I think?
Yeah, I mean, I only went to last year's national. It was my first national. And what I distinctly remember is the Zero Cool area, and I remember putting in my code and, whatever into the vending machine and getting my clerk's cards. And then I was like, how do I get the, the other cards the next day? What's the show? Man, I'm blanking out right now on the show, but
Stranger Things, I think.
Yeah, Stranger Things. Thank you, Stranger. So that it was the next day, and I wasn't going to be there. But I remember how cool that was. Like, I just remember the whole setup that they had, and it was almost like a mini experience. I did feel that way. That what Chris said was, I felt like like I've been to other festivities, like I've been to multiple NBA All-Star game festivals and MLB All-Star festivals. And among the crowd, you have like he mentioned before, you have athletes walking around, you have management walking around, general managers walking around that you're familiar with. And so I felt like to some extent that was kind of missing. I don't know that the national is that kind of event, but it'd be cool if it was. It'd be cool if you had more of that sort of, oh man, there's so-and-so walking. There's, Ed Reed, who was signing last year, Edgerrin James, guys that I'm fans of. And just hanging out for a little bit. So I think Chris is dead on there, because ultimately that is who we are collecting. That's, that's the athletes are the reason that we collect, a large part of it. And the cards too, obviously. It'd be cool if, and I don't know, maybe I didn't see them, but it'd be cool if you had more of these top level executives, Michael Rubin walking around and just, being among the masses, and
right.
And taking questions from people and just saying what's up. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I remember at the 2021 national, Ken Golden in his booth had this massive security guard, and anybody that tried to walk up to Ken Golden, the guy was like, whoa, man, back up. It was like super funny. And actually, so there's a comment here that I thought I really liked. Kids and teens would gravitate towards Fanatics Fest. So do you think that, Chris, I'll start with you. Do you think that these type of events will, if Fanatics comes in and they build, maybe like the next, maybe the next go-to event, maybe similar to, Mint Collective, for example, do you think that's going to put pressure on the national to innovate? Or do you think that the national will kind of always have sort of a prestige to it where, it's a go-to event no matter what. And then the Fanatics event, whatever ends up being, will kind of be like, if you want to go, you can. If you don't want to go, it's not that big of a deal, but you always got to go to the national. Do you think it'll be like that? Or do you think maybe Fanatics will push?
I think the national will always be the national. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Well, one other thing is that beginning next year, the national is having new management. So the folks that run the Chantilly show and the Philly show are going to be taking over from Ray Schulte, although I think Schulte's being kept on as some kind of advisor. So maybe with new promoters running the national, maybe we get some of these ideas in the national. I'm not so sure though, but as for Fanatics, I think what they should try to avoid being is something like, you ever been to like the All-Star Games Fan Fest?
Mm-hmm.
Not something like that, where it's just an event that's just for fans and not really collector focused.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Where an event where the card show is still the primary attraction, but you add other things, presentations, and other events. So
sure, makes sense. So we got Ziggy here in the background here. I'll bring him in. Ziggy, how we doing? What you got on your mind?
Doing well, guys. Doing well. Thanks for having me join, man. I want to talk a lot about Fanatics. So a few things. When you think about Fanatics events, I don't know if you guys have been to Comic-Con, right, or any of those events, but what I imagine what Fanatics can do is it's going to be able to add some inscription to autographs, add some personalized experience, add photograph options. I don't know if you've been following what they did on Fanatics Live this week, but they were live at the All-Star game, okay? And at the All-Star game, they're opening packs, and they had players come and autograph some base cards. Now, they didn't inscribe it, but you could have some inscriptions. But you have videos now of players autographing cards at the All-Star game and the Derby. So, again, imagine Fanatics can hold events. At the Super Bowl, they can have players come there and do signing events who aren't playing, but sign at those events. And then I, as somebody remotely, can now participate remotely, right? I can win, right? I can win a inscribed thing. So I'm super excited about the events they're going to bring. And I don't think it has anything to do with competing with the National, because the National has always been a dealers conference where dealers come together nationally, right? It just recently got it incorporated with corporate sponsors. I think what's great now is Fanatics will pull those corporate sponsors. So you talk about the Javits Center, it won't be Fanatics paying for the Javits Center. It's going to be Golden paying for the Javits Center. It's going to be it's going to be, PSA. It's going to be all these companies, their sponsorships are going to pay for the Javits Center. So Fanatics can bring those athletes there, and then we can go get specialized events. So I'm super excited about what they're doing on that side.
Absolutely. What else you got, Ziggy? We'll let you go after you got couple more.
Sure. The other topic I wanted to bring to your attention, again, I've been following Fanatics Live, and it seems like not many people are doing this or following it, which I'm surprised by that. The numbers in that have been around 200 participants per day. And I know a lot of people are kind of speculating on what's going on. Nia was talking about today. One thing I will tell you is Fanatics Live is 100% focused at gambling and chance. There are randoms, there are PYTs, and the thing that I don't like, they have the wheel of death, right? And if you're familiar with breaks, part of it's knowing what you're buying. In the wheel of death, you're basically buying an auction, you're competing against others to buy a spot, and then the wheel determines what your team is. And that is, again, it's all chance, all gambling. And the reason I say that is, again, a lot of people are saying, hey, Fanatics is going to help grow the hobby. They're all collector focused. The way they're growing it, guys, is through casinos and gambling. The way they'll get to the kids is we as parents will filter that down to our children. Fanatics is not marketing to children. They are marketing to adults. They're marketing to 20-somethings. Look at the sponsors. Look at the breakers they have on Fanatics Live. That's what we should be paying attention to. So again, I'm excited about the events, excited about what they're doing, but they're very clear about what they're bringing into this business and how they're growing it. And it's not by growing the collector base, right? You're not going to get 10x by getting more collectors. You're going to get 10x by getting more gamblers. In fact, you get 20x by getting more gamblers. I'll leave it at that, guys. Thanks again for having me on, and I'll enjoy the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Talk to you later. So, Horatio, I'll kick it to you first. So, Fanatics Live is kind of something also that has started over this past week or so. So, like, and this is sort of the thing where I'm seeing Fanatics trying to dip their toes into a bunch of different businesses. Do you think that we'll see Fanatics be? I mean, I guess it's probably, I think the answer is probably going to be no, but like, do you think that we'll see Fanatics be successful in every area they're trying to be successful in when it comes to cards? Or do you think like we'll see Fanatics Live go away? Or do you think they'll try the Fanatics event business and then maybe that'll go away? Like, how do you see how do you see Fanatics growth kind of like where do you see it happening maybe the most, I suppose, if there is this growth that they keep saying that they're trying to do?
I mean, Ziggy makes a good point, you know, and it wasn't even on my radar, but he's right. I mean, they already have you know, a place where people here in New York City where people can drop in and start making bets. You know, they kind of have, you know, their own casino of sorts here, and now they're kind of jumping into the card breaks business. I'm not too familiar with it, so I can't speak too much on it. But I mean, from what I know from friends that I have, I mean, gambling is the thing, man. I mean, it's huge, and I'm not a gambler. I kind of stay away from that just because I will lose my money in the first minute of whatever I do.
Right.
I'm not good at making predictions, and even when I think I am, I'm dead wrong. So I just stay away from that. So I just don't. That's not on my radar. But he's got a point there, and it's worth looking at. As far as what they're going to be successful in, I expect, you know, Fanatics to be in it for a while. They got tons of money. They have a bunch of investors. They've been getting different, you know, even though they've been growing, it seems like they have money pouring in, and I ultimately think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know if it's premature, but I ultimately think they're going to do an IPO, and they're going to become this huge conglomerate. I think that they're going to, you know, then get all this investor money. They're going to make a bunch of money in the IPO. The stock price is going to drop, but they're going to have made their money, and that's that. And then I think that's when it's kind of sort of, you know, I don't want to say game over, but that's when, you know, once you do that with your company, once you take it public, it's not a matter anymore of the experience, not a matter anymore of, you know, taking care of the fans, so to speak. What comes number one is making money. That's all. That's all that it is. And so I see them growing for a while. I don't think they're going away from anywhere. I think even if they're, like Chris said, even if they're a loss leader somewhere, like even if they, let's say, have all these events and they're losing money, they're not making money on it for whatever reason, I think they'll just continue to do that, because in the end, they are a competitor with, say, a national, because people have limited amount of money. So they're going to have to make a decision. Do I want to go to the Fanatics events? Do I want to go this year to the national? You know, what do I like better? And so ultimately people are going to speak with their wallets. And even though the events might be completely different, you know, they are somewhat of a threat, right?
Right. And I guess it's kind of interesting, you know, with the national, if you're bringing enough cards to the national, there's probably a decent shot that you can kind of pay for your trip to the national by selling cards there. I mean, I did try that, unfortunately, at the last national. And then as soon as I walked in, I saw this like little 12-year-old with a case, and he opened it up and he had like 3 Patrick Mahomes RPAs in it. And I was like, okay, well, it looks like I'm not selling my like random raw cards that I brought. I'll just network like I originally planned. But, you know, which that was probably lucky for the kid. He probably, you know, it probably was his dad's cards or whatever. But either way, that's kind of beside the point here. But, you know, Chris, I'll kick it to you. I don't really have a question for you. Like, what are your kind of thoughts on like all the Fanatic stuff that they're trying, I suppose?
Well, first of all, not all of them are going to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
What succeeds and what doesn't, that's going to be up to us, the collectors or the consumers, to decide. And I think they know that too. So as far as I don't know, we were talking about Fanatics Live, the app. I mean, somebody at the in the chat described it as OTB for cards, which I kind of think is kind of an apt description.
Right.
Going after that segment of the audience, when you have so much sports gambling available now, are people really gonna buy into breaks? You know, why would you spend your $50 on a break and get like the Cincinnati Reds or the Colorado Rockies?
Right.
Wait, hopefully you get something, and then wait maybe a couple of weeks to get your cards if you get it, when you can just put your $50 down on a Reds Rockies game and get that kind of instant satisfaction, or as instant as you can after a 9-inning game. So this kind of era in the hobby kind of reminds me a lot of the way poker was 20 years ago. I don't know if you remember 20 years ago when that was the first year that ESPN started broadcasting the World Series of Poker.
Mm-hmm.
And the winner was this guy right out of Central Casting, right? He was an accountant by day who played poker socially and spent like $225 on an online tournament and won a seat at the main event and wound up winning it and wound up winning like $3 million. And the guy's name was, and I'm not making this up, Chris Moneymaker.
Yeah.
So then the next year, the World Series of Poker comes up, and you have all these guys that saw what happened to Chris Moneymaker put their $10,000 down, because anybody with $10,000 can get into the World Series of Poker, and thought to themselves, maybe I'm smarter than that guy. I can win this thing. And poker just kind of grew over the last 3 or 4 years. And I kind of think that the hobby has, and I kind of think Fanatics thinks that that's where the hobby is now. You have a lot of people who, you know, may have collected when they were younger or don't collect now, see some of these cards and the amount of money that people are selling cards for and say, I can get into that. I'm smarter than those people. I have money. Right. I want to make money. Sign me up for Fanatics Live. So, but are there really enough people, and is there really enough money long term? And is that really the demographic that we want to go after for the long term health of the hobby? So,
yeah, I hadn't thought of that comparison. I think that's very accurate, honestly, like of what sort of the industry of breaking is right now. Like the way
you say the same thing about like daily fantasy 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, yeah, that's another phenomenal point. I think that a lot of people see what's going on, and people see that, you know, and I also think it's probably has to do with a lot of the marketing within the breaking industry. Like a lot of the marketing is like, oh, this person bought into a random $5 mixer or whatever and pulled this one of one. And I don't necessarily, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I don't love that type of marketing for breaking, because like 99% of the time, that's not what's going to happen. Like, and it's the same maybe with, you know, it's the same with like the daily fantasy with the guy that the people that won the $1 million maker or whatever, the $1 million, the $1 million fantasy thing. It's like that is a 1 in a trillion chance that happens again. Like now with sports cards, I feel like it is a little bit different, where even if you don't get that, you know, that crazy 1 of 1, you can still get like a couple decent rookie cards, and that can kind of pay for it a little bit. Yeah, and I also just think too with how sports betting has become so easily and so accessible, and it's just like literally, like I was at a Red Sox game a couple weeks ago, and I was betting like $1 on like pitches, like if it was going to be a ball or a strike. And like now, granted, I won like half of them, and I think honestly, I think gambling can be very not good for a lot of people. But I think if you take $10-15, this is exactly what I did. I took $10 and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna bet for however many. If I win, if I lose, that's fine, but just bet what you can bet. And I got putting in a bunch of bets. Like, so like I said, I was betting on, you know, the pitches, and I was putting like $1 down, and it was just kind of, it was like a fun kind of thing to add to the game. And I don't necessarily think that there's a way to add, I wouldn't really want to add something like that into cards. Like, I don't think that there really is any opportunities like that. I mean, I think getting into breaks, like I said, I just don't like how breaking is marketed, where they're saying this person, whatever, bought a $10 break and they've got this crazy $10,000 card. Like that's such, it's a weird kind of area, because it's rare, but it's also not rare because it's happening on a daily basis. But it's also like so rare because you think of how many cards are how many packs are being broken, like, just overall. Like, so, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see sort of Fanatics and the different types of markets that they try and break into. I think because you know, the 10xing of the market, I think they're trying to get more collectors in, and you can definitely see that, you know, with the college cards and with like tons of different areas that they're trying to bring in fans that are fans of sports, but may not be fans of sports cards because there just aren't really cards. Like, you know, an Alabama fan, for example, like they may love Alabama, but there really was no avenue for them to get into cards necessarily because, like, you know, they may love Bryce Young, but they might not love the Carolina Panthers. So it's like they don't want to collect a Bryce Young Carolina Panthers card, but they would love to collect a Alabama Bryce Young card. So it's like I just look at it like that, where those are the avenues that they're trying to break into. And I don't know. I think people have opinions about it being not good, being good. I don't know. It's all very relative, honestly, to people's situations, because, you know, you may have that one person that bought a $10 break and then they got a $10,000 card, but then you may have someone that honestly, like, they spent $10,000 on breaks, but they only got $10 worth of cards. So it's very, you know, it really is very relative to people's situations. And when you kind of see that, I think that's maybe sort of the narrative a little bit that's built. So yeah, I mean, we'll move on to more about the national, but I just want to get, you know, Horatio, I'll finish this kind of topic off. Do you have any like last thoughts about sort of this type of stuff that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think the one disadvantage here that Fanatics does have, if anything, is in the breaking, is that it's cold. You know, it's kind of from my experience, from what I understand, and talking to different breakers, is that the best breakers have developed, you know, communities. And yeah, that's kind of a buzzword, community, creating a community. But it is very true. Like, you know, a lot of the breakers have their followers and they do things for their followers, right? They don't just take their money. So they understand that, you know, hey, a lot of times you're going to get nothing for those $50, $100 that you just spent. You're going to get, you know, $5-10 worth of cards. So they make up for it in other ways. You know, they and not just like with rewards, like 10% off, you know, your next purchase at Fanatics. You know, like with legitimate rewards, like, you know, nice card giveaways, things like that. So unless Fanatics finds a way to kind of create that sense of community, you know, which is difficult for a private company like them, a huge private company like them, I think that the smaller breakers are going to have an advantage there with what they do, because they've been working at it for years, and they've built up a loyal base and a loyal following that you know they found a niche and people that want to do it and do it with them.
And, you know, same question for you, Chris. Like, before we're going to talk about your article on Hobby News Daily actually next. So just want to see if you had any like final thoughts on this, you know, this discussion. It's kind of gone a bunch of different ways, but, you know, I want to get your final thoughts on sort of everything that sort of stuff, anything, or actually, I mean, anything that we've kind of just been discussing the past like 20 minutes.
I just hope Fanatics just doesn't forget the traditional collector that doesn't care how much their cards are worth.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's kind of been forgotten about that over the last dozen or so years. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think, you know, that's kind of the other thing I think too. Like, there are so many different small niches within the hobby that it's like and I don't even think the collector is like one of the bigger niches for sure. I don't even think that's necessarily like a small one. I would say that's got to be like, it's almost like 50-50, where it's like 50% are just people who just like cards. They don't really care about what the prices are. They're not even really planning on selling them, to be honest. They just want the cards. And then you got 50% is kind of broken out into all the different other sports, all the different flippers, all breakers, all those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, I think, I hope that Fanatics, I've said this in the past, and I'm very 50-50 on like being on the company side versus like being on the people side. Like, I want the company to succeed because that's going to help the business and the whole industry succeed. But I also I don't want the collectors and people who are in the industry to be, like you said, forgotten about, because like they're also the other reason why the business is succeeding. So I think Fanatics needs to make sure that they are able to look at both sides of that spectrum and not just completely go off the rails and be only about the money and be only focused on that, which in IPO, you know, that might be the case. Like, unfortunately, like there may just be like that, but I guess, you know, it's weird. I feel like over the past, like since 2019, we were in a certain era. And then now with Fanatics, there's almost another era. And it kind of almost makes me think that there's just going to be different eras for every different couple of years for sports cards, and that we always have to adapt and all these types of things. Like I said, I think you made a great point. I just hope that they don't forget about the people who, you know, built the industry. And I think that's probably the best way to put it. And we will actually move on to your article Hobby News Daily. Let me pull that up here. Oops, nope, not this one. Let me pull that up, and we will discuss some of your tips and tricks for the national coming up here. Oops, here we go. So, Hobby News Daily, something that all of us here write for. Or I guess I do write a little bit, but you guys do articles, and one of your more recent articles, Chris, was tips and tricks for the national. So, like, from this list, are there any that you want to highlight that you were like, this is the most important, or did you put it from like most important to least important, you think, in this list, Chris?
I kind of put the most important ones first. And there are some that are specific to Rosemont for this year's. Point one is if you're going to the national, you can't just go for one day. You have to really experience it by going all 5 days. Now, I realize for some people that might not be feasible, but you have to do this at least once. Get a 5-day pass. The second one is just being prepared, because this just is not your typical card show. It's big. And
Yes.
I understand they even open up another wing of the Stevens Center for more.
Yeah, it's even bigger.
It's even bigger than it's been before. So prepare yourself that way. Get your want list updated. Wear a pair of comfortable shoes, because you're going to be on your feet all day, walking and standing. Bring some snacks, because you're going to get hungry. Bring like a refillable water bottle, because you're gonna need that. Trust me.
Yeah, because that's actually one thing that people don't realize is, and it also is kind of hot in there, honestly, and you don't even really realize it, because for the most part you're having fun with everybody, you're talking, you're doing all these things. You don't realize that you're getting a little bit sweaty, and you're probably losing a little bit of your like hydration. I mean, I actually even ran into that scenario. Like, when I get dehydrated, my fingers turn into like little sausages, unfortunately. So like, I always, when if I try and like bend my hands like this, and it feels like it's hard, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to go drink some water. And that happened. I remember that was actually one of the first times I realized it was at the national the last time. Was you get there early in the morning, and then it's like noon, and you're doing all these things, and then I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit dehydrated. But yeah, so keep going there.
Yeah, and bring some supplies like penny sleeves, top loaders, cardboard boxes, especially if you're buying raw cards. So you don't want them to get damaged.
Right.
Point 3, and this is a big one. There's thousands of people stacked together, butts to nuts. Don't be that guy. Deodorant is a thing. Use it. Wear a clean shirt every day. Take a shower. Brush your teeth. I mean, I shouldn't even have to say this, but you'll be surprised at some of the people that you run into at the national that, ugh.
Yeah, it is kind of like a meme a little bit, but like at this point, like you said, you would be a little bit surprised. So I mean, I'll let you take a little bit of a break there, Chris, and I'll kick it over to Horatio. I know you said that you've been to 1 or 2 nationals. What are your tips? I mean, I think we all have kind of tips for people that are going to the national. I think a lot of people in the chat probably have heard all these tips, but is there anything from your perspective like that you want to give a shout out to, or any tips you got for the national for the times that you've been?
I love the hygiene advice, Chris. I was surprised at how much. So the first time I ever felt my hips hurt was the day after the national. Like, I didn't realize how old I was until I walked around the national for like 10 hours or whatever, 8 hours. I was there all day walking around, checking out everything. Been to 1 national last year's Atlantic City, and wish I could have stayed longer. Even then, like I could only see. I'd say I really checked out about 3/4 of the convention center, and even then I probably didn't check it out the way it should have been. So the comfortable shoes is a big deal. I love the reentry thing. I mean, I had some awesome food. I just stepped outside of the convention center, walked about a block, and had myself a nice juicy burger in Atlantic City, and then came right back in. So that was cool. So yeah, I definitely didn't try any of the vendors in the convention center. It didn't look too good.
Well,
yeah,
the vendors in the Atlantic City Convention Center are like a 4-star restaurant compared to what you'll find in Rosemont.
yeah. A couple that I've been to, I did have the hot dogs, and it was actually the first time that I was putting ketchup on a hot dog, and I didn't even realize that because we were in Chicago, and the person was like, "Are you putting ketchup on a hot dog?" And I was like, yeah. And then after that, I realized that that's like a sin there in Chicago, is putting ketchup on a hot dog. And but if you're gonna have ketchup if you're gonna eat hot dogs at the Rosemont, just bring some gum or something, because you don't want your breath to stank like bad. Like after that's what I noticed. I had to like go back to my room and brush my teeth, because I was just like, that hot dog just, if I'm gonna be talking to people, I don't want them to be like, what did this guy eat? Like it's just so yeah, if you can, if you're able to go out and get food, don't the food at the Rosemont Convention Center is not ideal.
And at Rosemont, if one of the tips that I have later on is get the super VIP ticket if you can, because it comes with a parking pass. And if you're staying off the property, you can go in and out of the garage as many times as you want with that parking pass. And it's $15 to park if you don't have it. So you can actually drive out and drive into off the property and get like, I know there's every fast food chain in the world is set up there. Sometimes you just want Taco Bell instead of Gibson's,
Right. Yeah.
So that's another tip that I have. Get the 5-day pass and get the one with the parking ticket, because next year in Cleveland, it's next to an airport, so there's literally nothing around. So you have to drive out to get lunch unless you want to eat there.
Right.
And the lunch options there are okay in Cleveland. So
exactly.
Chris, what is it about the VIP pass? What
5 days admission. You get in 30 minutes early. You get promos, which you can flip for a couple of bucks. You get tickets for some autographs, which you can maybe flip for, again, flippable. The super VIP pass comes with double the amount of promos and double the amount of autograph tickets, and it comes with that parking pass, and it's like $50 more. So the parking pass will pay for itself with that $50. So I want to move to point 6. Remember what the Wu-Tang Clan said: cash rules everything around the National. So bring a lot of cash with you. Most of them will accept credit cards and PayPal, but a lot of these guys, they want the greenbacks.
Definitely.
Mostly for tax purposes,
Right. Yeah, but don't promote that you have the cash on you, because that's how you get robbed. That's
another thing.
Just bring the cash, but be careful.
Be careful with cash, and be careful going through an airport with cash, because there's a lot of corrupt cops out there that will. It's called civil asset forfeiture. They can steal your money without charging you with a crime. So anyway.
Also, if you're buying sealed wax at the National and you're trying to fly with it, be careful there too, because there's a chance that they may have to open up the box. So, I haven't experienced it, but like I've seen, there's been stuff on Instagram and YouTube of people trying to bring stuff through TSA, and they're like, well, we have to open up this box, and it's like that totally basically ruins the sealed wax perspective. So that's something to be careful of. I think you probably
there's usually on the floor of the National, there's usually like a shipping company set up that will ship your purchases UPS or FedEx. in case you don't want to carry them, or at least
Right.
you can't fit them all into your carry-on luggage. So.
Right, exactly.
Anyway.
Yep, definitely.
Point.
Yeah, keep going. We got here. What
Okay.
are the other good tips you got here?
Point 7, forget a budget. All right. You're going to find stuff that you will never imagine that's been on. You will find cards that have been on your want list for years, and you're going to want to buy them, but you don't have the money for them. Just bring some extra money with you, because you will find those cards that are at the NSCC. So.
Yeah, and then we actually got a good question here from Clean Cheap Shots. What's your advice for cash and cards at your hotel? Place it in the safe or other security? You can buy one of those like little safes from like Target for like whatever $25-$30, and then most hotels should have the safe. So I mean that's probably your best bet depending on how much stuff you got. I don't think I've never, to be honest, the stuff that I'm usually bringing to the National and the amount of cash, like I'm not really bringing that much stuff. So like, I'm not even really that worried about it most of the time. It's a couple times that I've gone, but for you guys, like, is this, how have in the past, have you kind of kept all of your stuff in your hotel room? Is it like in your safe, in your suitcase? Like, don't dox yourself. Like, if someone tries to break in your room, don't tell them where all the stuff is going to be, but like general tips on like how to protect yourself and how to protect the stuff that you're bringing.
If you're driving, just throw it in your trunk. That way no one sees it.
Right.
So.
Right. Horatio, same with you. Like, have you done traveling to shows? Like where do you, again, don't dock yourself. Don't tell people exactly where you're keeping all your stuff, but like in general, where have you found that has worked best to keep some of these like, important things that you don't want other people knowing about?
Yeah. I mean, when I travel, I just went to the National for a day, so I didn't have to worry about storing it overnight. But when I travel in general, I don't really take anything. That's another thing. Like whatever it is, like I don't take anything too valuable. And even if I do lose it, and I've had stuff taken, you'd be surprised. I've had stuff taken from me. Like I've had, high-end coffee taken from my luggage, from overseas where it was, I don't know, $100 for, a can. But I could afford to lose $100, right? Like, but I would never stick in, a couple grand kind of stuff that would kind of hurt. So yeah, I pack light.
Yep. Yeah. That's another good tip. I mean, I think it kind of depends on how you're traveling to the National too. Like if you're a dealer, obviously it's a lot different than if you're just going there to maybe buy and maybe sell a little bit. Like, if you are going there with the intent to buy, then that's probably going to be a little bit easier than like if you have to store anything. So let's see. I'm just gonna pull up. We got another couple minutes here. I'm just gonna pull up the tips here, and then let's see. We got don't be afraid to skip day, Chris. We can kind of wrap things up. Maybe that'll be our last tip here, and then we'll sort of wrap up the show.
If you've never been to Chicago, just Saturday is a zoo at the National. Don't be afraid to like go out. I mean, the Cubs aren't in town this weekend, but the White Sox are. It's Chicago,
Right. Exactly.
And I also put I mentioned it's 5 minutes from the house where John Wayne Gacy buried 30 of his victims. If you're into serial killers,
if you're into the more morbid side of Chicago, I suppose. Cool. I mean, like we said, it's coming up. I think everybody is probably preparing for the National videos. This was our contribution to it. Next week, I'll be back again doing maybe similar stuff here on the show. I'll be the host again. I think we're going to sort of wrap the show up a little bit. Chris, I know you wanted to give a shout out here at the end of the show just before we kind of were wrapping.
Rick D'Alessandro died last month, and people may not know the name Rick D'Alessandro, but he was a dealer he owned a hole-in-the-wall card shop in Toms River, New Jersey. People probably know his online persona, which was Dr. Wax Battle. And he was a bit of a character. And he was one of the first guys, I think he might have been the first guy to record his customers opening them up packs and boxes and putting them on this brand new website called YouTube. So this was about 2007, 2008. If you actually go to the Backstops YouTube page, I opened up a couple of boxes when I was there. But I think he's a guy that never really got his flowers because he was an innovator. If you've ever seen a video box break on YouTube or on any other website, thank Dr. Wax. So yeah, he was only 60 too. So yeah, kind of young. So
yeah,
Dr. Wax. Thanks.
Shout out to Dr. Wax. Thank you for, maybe it's something that, maybe you're bringing this up and hopefully somebody in the audience has the resources and they can put together something, to monument sort of some of the stuff that he did. I think that would be really cool. If anybody has in the audience, now that maybe more people are going to be hearing about him, that I think that would be really cool. Horatio, any final thoughts on today's show?
No, thank you for having me. I got to shout out the comment section. I read every single one. Pretty hilarious, man. Shout out to all you guys, everybody that were commenting on what we were talking about. Really cool experience. Appreciate it. So really, you guys kind of help us move the show along. I really do believe that. So thank you for that, and thank you guys for having me. One thing I'd like to add: the Tour de France is going on. We're in the middle of it. It's one of the world's great sporting events, and if you're not familiar with it, one of our great cyclists, right, is right now vying for his third Tour de France. Tadej Pogacar, he's a Slovenian cyclist, modern day, kind of generational rider, and he's in the middle of a battle with another great cyclist, Jonas Vingegaard. He's a Danish cyclist. So yeah, just mentioning that out there because it's we talk about goats. This guy could be the goat of cycling, and here in the United States, we know nothing about it. So
yeah, I think the sport has been kind of damaged by Lance Armstrong and his the juice. So unfortunately, yeah,
that's true. Very true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quick question in the chat: how come there are no Barry Bonds cards in modern sets? Because Barry Bonds, I guess, doesn't want to be on a baseball card anymore.
Yeah, he might not be part of the MLBPA, which is the reason why Michael Jordan isn't in any Panini sets because he's not signed to the Players Association in the NBA. So maybe that's probably got to be some of the reason if I had to guess. Maybe same with Mark McGwire. I mean, I don't really see many Mark McGwire cards, but I guess that I think that's the answer to the question there. So like I said, I want to thank you guys as the co-hosts here. Thank you to the chat. Make sure you tune back in next week, same time here on Bench Clear Media. Hobby Hotline, Hobby News Daily is another website that we all work for. So I'm going to give them one quick last shout out here before we end the show. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Keep on rocking in the free world.